Okay, so here we are on this 7-point mind training. We're still on the second point out of 7 because there's a lot in this. So slide 47. No, 40, hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's before then. Yes, 46. Anyway, so just I can't remember if we're recapping from last week, but I thought this was a good place to start. Always good to recap anyway. Okay, so this quote from the Precious Garland by Arya Nagarjuna. Which was a great profound teaching, particularly on the 6 perfections, goes through all the grounds of the bodhisattva, and particularly for Nagarjuna's friend, the other one, letter to a friend, his friend the king, and giving him advice about practice. Okay, given that the king has a sort of responsibility in the world, how wonderful that they even sought the Buddha's advice and practice, or at least Nagarjuna's at this point, representing the second Buddha, as he's often called. May I be as dear to sentient beings as their own life. So a sense of being a life saver, that as precious as their life is, so am I that precious. I was having a conversation with Venerable Yeshi this morning, and saying how expensive anesthetists are, how much they charge, right? I don't even know how much they charge, but it's a lot from memory. And she said, well, they're the lifesaver. They're keeping you alive. Fair enough, okay? Pay them whatever it takes. So having a mind like that, and may they be even more dear to me. So may they be even more dear to me. In other words, more dear to me than my own life, so that I hold them precious and dear on the basis of other sentient beings, is how I become enlightened, is how I develop love, compassion, kindness, all the 6 perfections, generosity and so forth, how I cultivate the mind of bodhicitta. If it wasn't for other sentient beings, I couldn't do that. Why is that? Because in order to develop compassion, in order to develop the affectionate love, we need an object of that. And the object, we could say that the objects of the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So in one way, yes, depending on those, but really to cultivate the mind of bodhicitta. So we have the first 2 lines about taking refuge, Buddha Dharma Sangha. So that's our objects of refuge. But to cultivate bodhicitta, we really need other sentient beings on whom, especially those who rub us up the wrong way and the difficult ones in our lives, especially we need those. So we can hold them. So the practice is to hold them dear. May their ill deeds fructify for me. So fructify is like gain fruition, or be productive, or be beneficial for me. So in other words, as we take on the suffering of others through this practice of taking and giving, wishing to take on their suffering, or as we meet those adverse conditions with a Dharma mind, with a mind of compassion, kindness, transforming our mind, is again in relation to the harm done to me by others, or that I perceive to be the harm done by others. And may all my virtues fructify for them, be beneficial for them. So this is this practice, the practice of giving, where we're thinking about giving everything to others. Okay. have to do a particular thing for it to turn the page. Next page. Taking on others' suffering doesn't mean that you go through a process of imagining and their suffering simply disappear. So we would like it to be like that. You know, may you be free of your sufferings, we say, and the causes of their suffering, but it isn't magic. You know, causes of the suffering is what? Karma and delusions, afflicted states of mind. And if we're visualizing taking that on from someone else, as the Buddha said, I can't take that away from you. I can't wash away all your negativities and so forth. I can't do that. So it's not doing that. Their sufferings don't just simply disappear by a result of the practice. I always think about Jesus Christ being on that cross to take on the sufferings of the world. Did it? No. Was it great compassion? Absolutely. Yeah. And an inspiration that, you know, many Christians forever since have been inspired by, and some of us Buddhists as well. Nor is it, as the Dalai Lama said, Jesus Christ was a great bodhisattva, and of course, yeah. Nor is it as if you receive their sufferings and just put it aside. So we don't just forget about it and saying, okay, done that, on to the next one. Because what it is we are cultivating our love, our compassion, our bodhicitta, our taking special responsibility to free them from suffering. In other words, the only way to do that ultimately is to become a Buddha, but as much as I can practically in this life, to cultivate that mind. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you know, to do that by myself alone. And strengths, you know, Rinpoche always would emphasize alone. You go, what? Alone? Am I alone? But of course, it's not that we are alone. We're along with other like-minded doing that practice. But we're saying, if nobody else does it, I will do. You know, I won't say, oh, nobody else is doing it, so I won't do. So if I see a trip hazard, I'm not going to say, oh, somebody should move that. I move it, of course, for the benefit of others. I don't want to see people trip over the trip hazard. Or, you know, you have the training where you put like a chair or something over it, or you do something to help others. That's just a very simple example. So it's that taking on a special responsibility in our spiritual path that I will do this. You know, I will visualize taking on their suffering out of great compassion and cultivate my mind of compassion and giving them, you know, all my wealth, all my possessions, all my, may not want my wealth, won't go very far, but the wish, you know, and then you can multiply that in your mind so that it becomes more greatly enhanced. Okay, so you should think of taking their suffering to the core of your heart. When we say the core of the heart, we're talking about the heart chakra. So we're talking about, you know, as it says, this has a special effect striking at the self-centered attitude abiding there. So we have this sense of when we say, you know, it's mine, it's, you know, me, mine, we tend to point there. So we can think about that as the seat of grasping at a self. And we visualize that becoming like a hard rock that through this practice, then it's like a laser beam effect striking at that attitude and blasting it to smithereens. So that's what we're visualizing. Of course, are we free of our self-cherishing attitude? Absolutely not. But we're chipping away. We can see how since beginningless time, we've had this self-centered, self-grasping, and on top of that, self-cherishing attitude. And so, you know, it's very strong. And we just got to look at the strength of that and the frequency of that. So it's interesting to look at the frequency of that. Even us Dharma practitioners, right? How hard it is to reduce the frequency, how often in one day that self-cherishing mind arises, you know, like this. And then the power of that, the strength of that, even though intellectually and in our hearts, we're really wanting to orient towards cherishing others. Venerable Rene Fusi, when he was many years ago. So Venerable Rene is a Swiss monk in FPNT, a teacher and a great meditator. You know, when he first ordained, Rinpoche sent him straight into retreat. And I remember him writing about, and he's done teachings on, you know, when he did a retreat on the Heart Sutra. And so it was a retreat on emptiness. And he said, whenever a sense of I arose, this self-cherishing attitude, I stood up. And you think, wow, that's fantastic. He recognized it, stood up, like broke the meditation, then sat down again, continued on. I went to Geshe Sampton, who was my teacher in Sydney, and said, Geshe, I wouldn't be sitting down. And of course, Geshe gave a great teaching on the different levels of grasping and the sense of I and so forth. So it was well worth having my neurotic mind go and seek comfort, well, advice, not comfort. Not comfort, really. We really have to go out of our comfort zone. Okay, so striking at this self-centered attitude. So, you know, last week we were mentioning in talking of giving, you know, the mind training like the rays of the sun, talking about the practice of giving your body, giving your possessions, giving your roots of virtue. These are generally the three that are talked about here. Giving those to, and giving to those, you know, of course we visualize giving in general to all sentient beings. Then we can go through each of the different realms, and then giving to those not engaged in the spiritual path. So there's a whole, so many sets of givings. Not engaged in the spiritual path. So we go through each realm of existence and understand what the particular sufferings, so giving to beings in the hot hells, the cold hells, blistering hells, all the neighboring hell realms, and thinking about what are the particular sufferings of those when we do the taking, but to give them whatever we can, transforming everything just as an alchemist, alchemical, an alchemist changes iron into gold, so transforming, and that they attain freedom, their minds are pacified, freedom, opportunity to practice Dharma, and think that they're enriched with the 7 jewels of an exalted being. So the 7 jewels of an exalted being are faith in the Dharma, faith in the Guru, having checked out the Buddha's teachings, having a faith of conviction, not blind faith, but faith of conviction, having pure ethics, having the learning, the Dharma teachings, having integrity, consideration for others, so orienting towards others, and having discriminating wisdom. We should imagine that just like a wish-fulfilling jewel, whatever we desire, food, clothing, imagine giving that away. So it's cutting through our self-grasping, our desirous attachment by the things that I desire, of giving that. You know, when it comes to the last piece of chocolate. And it's like, okay, maybe before the last piece, maybe the whole block or the box, everything, give it away. And, you know, in giving that, whatever we do, we think, oh, the food's imbued, rich with 100 flavors, pure, delicious elixir, even though it's chocolate. But, just thinking it's enhanced and most gorgeous, and in the form they can receive as nectar. And then clothing, it says, to the value of 1,000 gold coins. Actually, gold's pretty expensive these days. I don't know, 1,000 gold coins is millions. Excellent companions who act only as inspiration, who delight in whatever objects are to be enjoyed and are replete with anything, so that we imagine them being completely content and have all the factors for enlightenment. So then we go through each of the realms thinking like that, visualizing our bodies, providing the basis for hearing the teachings, for contemplating the teachings, for meditating on that, for practice. So if we think about that, different beings in different realms, we know that in different realms apart from the higher realms, they're unable to have limited capacity, if any, to practice. But we can wish for that. In other words, we're wishing them to have a precious human rebirth in which they can develop meditative stability, of which they can train in the Dharma. And imagine through their practice of the 6 perfections, they reach the culmination of the 2 accumulations of merit and wisdom. They reach Buddhahood, where their mind streams are endowed with the eternal delight of a perfect body of truth, which is a Dharmakaya, wisdom body of a Buddha, which is not a physical body, the mind. So we visualize quite extensively like that, and then going through, the 36 different types of hungry ghosts, that then with animals in the ocean, on the land, in the skies, all the insects and so forth, throughout all the realms, etc., humans, and to those in the God realms. And then it goes on with giving in particular to those who harm us. And the same practice should be repeated to all beings in every direction, so all 10 directions, offering to those on the spiritual path. Make offerings to practitioners of the lower vehicle, transforming your body into wish-fulfilling forms which meet their needs. Imagine each one provides the practitioner with, again, the perfection of the 2 collections, etc., up to Buddhahood. Then offering to the great bodhisattvas, offering to those on the path of accumulation all the way up to 10 ground bodhisattvas. Think they obtain the bliss of a perfect body, the Dharmakaya, and their mind stream. Offer your body to spiritual masters, your gurus, residing in infinite, extensive worlds of the 10 direction. Imagine creating bodies, many bodies before each of them, and that these bodies have numerous arms and hands, enabling us to offer innumerable prostrations, stimulated by an understanding of the advantages to be gained thereby due to the process of karma, actions and results. And imagine immeasurable heaps of offerings, inconceivable offerings emanated from this wish-granting body, for many of them, and therefore gain a great uncontaminated peace is born in their mind streams. Pretty expansive. Like if we were, to practice Tonglen, the practice of giving and taking like this, it's just so rich, isn't it? So at different times we can focus on different beings. How many times do we think even of those, giving to our gurus? Do this practice, maybe we do, of course, we talk about in serving the Guru, practice of, offerings, making offerings, offering service, and the best thing is offering our practice. So, we can combine all that in this Tonglen practice. Giving to the environment. So imagine transforming all the impurities of the environment. Here it says, filled with decayed logs, thorns, bushes, sand, crevices, cliffs, and so forth, into the wonderful pure lands in the nature of precious stones as level as the palm of the hand, extensive and smooth to touch, stainless and bright, perfumed with sandalwood, scattered with celestial flowers, and fenced with jewels. So this is when we offer the mandala, particularly this is what we're doing. We're transforming everything from its ordinary environment into this gorgeous pure land. And if we know the visualizations of particular pure land, say of Tashita, where Lama Tsongkhapa abides with Maitreya Buddha and Lama Atisha. So if we can, visualize that, Lama Zopa Rinpoche has given an extensive commentary on and also Chodron Rinpoche on the visualization of Tashita, and we can visualize transforming this world into that. And we say that, for example, in the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, as smooth as the palm of the hand. So, is it? In the nature of lapis lazuli and as smooth as the palm of the hand. Free from pebbles and, Well, here it says, from the Bodhisattva's way of life, may everywhere the earth be pure, free of stones and pebbles, level as the palm of my hand, and smooth in the nature of aquamarine. So sometimes we see translations as lapis lazuli, and then Rinpoche says, oh no, sapphire is much more precious, so it's finding the most precious jewel to represent that. Giving away our possessions, giving away all our virtues. Okay. So quite extensive giving. Okay. So this has the special effect striking at the self-centered attitude abiding there. And we can see why we need those extensive visualizations, because we need that great power to engage our mind in that, motivation, in that aspiration to give, without strings attached, to counter this self-cherishing mind that's been there for beginningless time, because it's so powerful. So it's like acting, these beautiful descriptions act as inspirations for our mind. Next one. Giving and taking is a practice that should be undertaken with great mental courage and determination. So the courage of, so sometimes we talk about the courage of being out of step with society, but here is the mental courage of actually challenging our own afflicted states of mind, based on that self-grasping mind and self-cherishing mind, to really, the challenge to really shake its foundations, to weaken those minds, to weaken all our negative habits. Giving and taking is a practice that should be undertaken with great mental courage and determination, so that, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, never give up, that I'm determined to engage in this practice. I'm determined to diminish the self-cherishing mind and cultivate more and more this great compassion, this great love, affectionate love for others, and to cultivate, you know, this sense of taking responsibility for others, because our minds can be very lazy and go, yeah, I know I should, but yeah. So what we're doing is cultivating that mind, doing whatever we can in our current capacity, but the more that we cultivate these minds, the more we're actually capable of doing. So never giving up on that determination, never falling back to and saying, oh, you know, this bodhisattva path is too hard, I'm going to try something easier, or just, you know, give up. It happens, right? The great Sharawa said that if you really want to accustom your mind to such an instruction, so Sharawa was keeping in mind the teacher of Geshe Chökyi, who composed the 7-point mind training. This is what his teacher said. Your practice should not be merely like a stone tumbling down a steep slope, nor it be like lukewarm water in a stagnant pool. There's a commentary in that. I mean, so many ways it's self-evident. I was just reading it this morning, but okay. Well, I think it's self-evident in terms of not being superficial, you know, not just like that nothing sticks, just sort of the stone tumbles down and it doesn't have any effect, or it's just like, yeah, nothing sticks. Or like lukewarm water, it's sort of, yeah, lukewarm approach in a stagnant pool, which means it has absolutely no effect on you whatsoever, just like the stone tumbling down a steep slope is not going to have any effect on that steep slope. So having no effect on our mind. It should be as red as blood and white as curd. This means that you train your mind, that to train your mind, you should not be half-hearted, hesitant, or apprehensive, but totally dedicated and decisive. You cannot expect to engage in the practice of mind training one day and the next day do something else if you're looking for success. So not just a one-off, not just half-hearted. We've got to do again and then again and then again. So this quote is actually from Geshe Sharawa. Yeah. Oh, this refers to the previous, yeah. So Geshe Sharawa says, you can train and accustom yourself to this instruction of mine, neither in the manner of a single long meme, no matter how level or extended it may be, nor like a stone rolling down a rugged hillside, no matter how tough. This is the quote I was just looking for. Nor like a stagnant, lukewarm pond water. But if you strive with absolute determination, saying goes, red as blood and white as curd, then like a donkey emerging from a flock of sheep, okay, you will be free from all interferences and sufferings. If you hesitate over whether it is proper or improper, or whether you can or cannot engage in the training, it will not be successful. So that's really very pertinent, isn't it? That if we're sort of feeling like, oh, I can't do this, it's not going to work for me, then of course it will be, that prophecy will be fulfilled. And so if we go through it in that sort of half-hearted way, we're going to get a half-baked result. It's clear, like the more effort that we put into it, the greater result. So here, Prabhupada Rinpoche adds, you may not really be able to take these things when you do the meditation, when we're taking on visualizing, taking on illness, disease, disturbed states of mind, war, environmental disasters. But it will give you great impetus to complete your merit collection. In other words, the accumulation of merit. This is what we're aiming for. So if we think that, yes, this is so that I can cultivate that mind of compassion, not to despair that we can't see that it's having an impact in the world. Our wish is to do that. If your mind becomes more familiar with the process, it is said that eventually you actually can take on these things. So, for example, Thubten Chökyi Rinpoche, a great holy being who passed from this life. He passed in this life December 2006. It was the 16th of December. It was Lama Tsongkhapa Day. I remember when we got the news and I was with another nun and we immediately started doing all these practices. But I thought, how auspicious that was Lama Tsongkhapa Day. One would assume that he had some control over when to, just like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when to decide that this is time. And I remember that there was Venerable Amy, I think, or Amy Miller, who had spent quite a bit of time with Thubten Chökyi Rinpoche. And anyway, she was keeping us updated on these reports from Thubten Chökyi. And at one point, someone asked him, why have you got such an aggressive cancer? Why is this so bad? You're a great holy being, And he said, what do you expect when you're taking on the sufferings of the world? So the indication was that he was actually able, and that arose in his body as a form of cancer. That's the indication from what he said. So it is eventually possible to be able to take on some sufferings like that. Thubten Chökyi went to Antarctica and was sent by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to do practices to help realign the planet, and this was in relation to climate change and so forth. So who knows how bad it would be without these interventions. That obviously he had some powers to do that, otherwise the Dalai Lama would not have wasted his time and so forth. And so at the end of this practice, it says if we do this practice well, and they're taken right into the center of the heart, it is good if this makes you fear for your life, because that's really challenging this self-cherishing. And then we sort of freak out that that's being challenged and, and so forth. So this really, we can see why this is an advanced practice that wasn't for beginners, that it was for those who, as it was, passed on in secret to those whose minds are ready, for those who have a great capacity for turning their minds to cherish others, because otherwise you've got no foundation. So you have to have, ironically, a strong sense of self, but not this self-cherishing mind, if you like, or at least we're trying to act against that. That, you know, that if we practice it well, it truly is transformative for our minds. Yeah, so you cannot expect to engage in the practice of mind training one day and the next do something else if you're looking for success. But then another quote from His Holiness. So His Holiness, the fifth Dalai Lama, in training the mind in the great way, you know, goes through a whole lot of other meditations in relation to impermanence, death, and so forth in this practice of Tonglen. Not going through that in detail, but as also His Holiness has the Dalai Lama said, transcend preconceptions in this practice, for there are many examples of its effectiveness demonstrated in the lives of earlier Buddhas. This is to say, even though there is no physical exchange with others, that we're not actually taking on their suffering and we're not actually giving them all our wealth, which also might freak us out, our possessions and everything, which is like, whoa, our virtues? No, I've worked at that for a long time. Ironically, it's a practice that increases our virtues and so forth as a result. So meditation does not become valueless. Quite to the contrary, it's a value of generating waves of enlightenment within the mind stream of the practitioner, thus eventually bringing tremendous joy and goodness to the world. And we can see, perhaps just in our sphere of influence, you know, maybe those who've engaged in such practices, engaged in the Bodhisattva's way of life, we can see that, hopefully, you know, that transformation, that impact on those around us. We can't necessarily see the impact on the environment, although when we read the stories of great holy beings and the actual impact that's had on the environment, you know, this is why we go to these pilgrimage places, that they have special power, energy that's been built up by those practices by great practitioners over many years, so forth. So then the actual practice, training in the awakening mind, how to yes, this is where we're at. We're in part B, how to train the conventional mind of awakening mind. That's what we've been talking about. The next verse says, concerning the three objects, three poisons and three virtues, the instruction to be followed in brief is to take these words to heart in all activities. This one. Quote here from Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, which is itself a commentary on this training. When the six senses come into contact with the six objects, so our physical senses, 5 physical senses plus mental, come in contact with the six objects, such as those that are attractive, unattractive, and neutral. So that's what we're talking about, the three objects that we perceive as attractive, that we perceive as not attractive, and that we perceive neither attractive or unattractive. If the three corresponding poisonous or disturbing emotions arise, so the root poisons of ignorance, aversion, and desire, attachment, out of which all the other afflicted states of mind come. So if those three arise, sincerely train your mind. Think, by this means I cut off all disturbing emotions. By the means of this practice, I cut off all disturbing emotions of all the many beings. We've just said we can't actually do that yet, but to think like this, empowered by them in this world, may they thus abide in virtue and be freed of the three poisons. Right, so we practice this in all activities. And then Pabonka Rinpoche has a bit more on this. This, yeah. When other sentient beings direct their intention to any of these three types of objects, when others, they, like us, develop such delusions as attachment, hostility, and so forth, and their rebirth in lower realms depends on all such delusions and these three objects. So imagine yourself taking on all these things together with the causes for these beings suffering in samsara. Think, I have relieved all sentient beings of attachment, hostility, and benighted ignorance. What does benighted mean? Ignorance. Anyway, ignorance. So that beings of attachment, so that now they have only root virtues. Regard their self-cherishing as being to blame for all their unfavorable circumstances. So we've looked at this in terms of ourselves and the faults of the self-cherishing, self-grasping attitude. Now it's thinking of all other sentient beings like that, that this is the reason for all their unfavorable circumstances, lower rebirths, all their difficulties, all their problems, all their illnesses, and so forth. We talk about in the Guru Puja 404 affliction-caused diseases. So thinking like that. Understand that these things you have taken on will ripen on you, and let that be a cause for delight. By doing this, someone familiar with mind training will never be unhappy, because all unfavorable circumstances will seem to be, to them, to be very helpful. So we have to train our mind to see all unfavorable circumstances. Great, wonderful, as Rinpoche would say, wow, wow, wow. The cherry on top of the ice cream. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you still have to deal with it, or we can think another karmic debt repaid, or for example, when a trader takes to the road, so we're talking historically, he has to take things philosophically. If it rains, at least he won't be robbed. Okay, at least you didn't have an accident, it just broke down. If he is snowed in, at least his pack animals will not go lame. I don't know what happens if they do, right? Yeah, so it says, if you're plagued by suffering, it's quite useless to be unhappy. Turn your mind to something helpful. Then, when beset by bad circumstances, think, may the things to which all sentient beings fall victim descend on thee. Nothing could be more beneficial than thinking this way. I remember one time that many years ago, I came out of the shower, went into the kitchen and slipped over on the lino, and my coccyx took the brunt. And I thought, agonizing back pain. May all sentient beings be relieved of this right now, including myself. It was more the self than anything else. I can say, I have compassion for all sentient beings who've had this. Can you take it away right now? a little bit limited, but at least I thought about this momentarily. So we can see got a way to go. Yeah. Concerning 3 objects, 3 poisons, and 3 virtues, the instruction to be followed in brief is to take these words to heart in all activities, so not just lightly thinking about it. Next one. So this is the commentary from Say Chubu, a student, direct student of Geshe Chökyi. In the subsequent periods, train the mind by purifying the fields of your experience, which is exactly what Prabhupada Rinpoche has just said. When you experience emotions such as attachment, anger, and delusion, the 3 poisons in relation to sight, sounds, and so on that are attractive, unattractive, or neutral, the 3 objects, train the mind as follows. Next. Sadly, just as I indulge my sensual cravings now, countless beings in the universe are overwhelmed by desire, indulging in countless negative acts. So we can see the impact it has on myself. I've had these teachings and so forth, and just think others are, I find it helpful in that way to think they can't help themselves. You know, this is a desire realm. And even you don't want something, advertising will convince you to, isn't it? Yeah. Extract all these desires of other beings in a single gesture, taking into your heart. So really to smash that self-cherishing and praying. May all these sentient beings be endowed with the virtuous root of non-attachment. And then we, of course, can need to include ourselves because we're not yet free. We've not got this non-attachment. But the more that we visualize, as before, all those different ways of giving and all, you know, giving to those on the spiritual path and those not on the spiritual path, those who harm us, all beings in all the 6 realms, to our gurus and so forth, all these expansive ways, we're reducing this grasping mind of desirous attachment, which is the main cause for us being propelled into samsara yet again, into yet another life of suffering. And in the same way, extend this practice to all poisons by applying the 3 virtues. So the ignorant mind of self-grasping, cherishing others. And then the mind of desirous attachment, visualize taking that on, and that may all beings have non-attachment, and including myself, which is the opposite. And the mind of aversion, you know, anger, you know, may all beings cultivate love, cultivate patience. That's most needed in the world. The impatience. I think I've, even on the roads in Perth, had a bit when the light goes, changes, and you haven't moved. But in Sydney, it happens at the same time. It's like, it's just like, I didn't even take a breath. Apparently with the electric, not the electric cars, the autopilot ones, when they tried them out on roads, the reason they had they said, oh, we're going to do more experimentation, because you have to build in the human reaction time, like where the light goes green, and you go, oh, the light goes green. This is slowing it down. Then you go. Well, at the moment, the light goes green in Sydney. Beep. So there's some very fast minds there. Just like, hold on, it only just went green. It's very stressful. So we could think at that time, actually, there's a lot of practice can be done on the road to really say, please come into the rain. Please don't have a heart attack. Please.
I think that was the definition
Is it? Yeah, that's something like that. That's a good definition of a nanosecond. It's so quick, isn't it? Okay. In the same way, extend this practice to all the 3 poisons. this line, by taking these words to heart in all activities, refers to training the mind by means of mere words. So it's saying, get used to, like in the in-between time, but training our mind, reciting over and over again words that are going to help us, quoting from the scriptures, may the sufferings of all beings ripe upon me through my virtues, may they all achieve happiness. And I don't know if we've still got copies here. Remember the little book, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, How to Be Happy? It's a little, and sort of almost like a daily reflection and little description. It's all about this, how to train our mind towards that happiness. Or, of course, in much more detail, transforming problems into happiness goes into this training. So that training our mind to think like that, and particularly at a time when somebody is, pushing our buttons, shall we say, we're reacting to someone or something. So I have no idea what this was. One time we had the Jade Buddha relics traveling around, and we had other relics from the Theravadan tradition. And it was in Western Sydney, Helston Park, at a centre there, a Dharma centre there, which was a Mahayana centre. It was a Vietnamese abbot there. And we're having all these, ceremonies and so forth. And I think at one of these ceremonies, we were standing, all the monks and nuns standing, chanting and so forth. And suddenly, like I was standing behind a couple of rows of nuns, I didn't even know them. And this mind of aversion popped out to the nun in front. I didn't even know this person. And I don't know, in a way it was easy to grab, because it's like, I have no basis for this. Karmically, something arose. Well, my mind of aversion rose. And why? It was like weird. But because it was so weird, I could see it was so weird and think, okay, you've got to do some practice here. And did Vajrasattva practice, and and then did some tongling, giving. Just while I was standing there, obviously I couldn't chant at the same time, which is okay because I didn't know their chants. But just like, how does that happen? So it's like catching those times and using those times when you can see that aversion rise in your mind. We might justify it, well, because she did this and this and this. None of that was true in my case. So that was easy to do with, to want to nip in the bud, because I didn't want it to grow into this story where I maybe could have justified it, but there'd be no justification. And it's just like, okay, find those moments. And when those moments arise, and maybe we justify it even, but at least, engage rather. Think that may all the sufferings of all beings, may all the aversions of all beings ripen on there. That sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? Remember, we can't actually take on all their aversions. But may they all achieve happiness, and that way we're putting our mind in that mind of virtue, so it benefits us, and stops that crazy mind from, festering away and building a whole big drama around nothing.
That worked?
That worked, absolutely worked. But as I said, so it's applying that at a time when it might be someone, often people say it's someone close to them, like the person you hold dear, who may be the one that also pushes your buttons, and also we have that. It can be harder to shine the light of awareness on there early enough to catch it before it becomes full blown. But as soon as we do, to take that opportunity, and we're happier. That's the result. We're happier. And we haven't now caused a great dispute with someone else. It's very practical. And we've got to think, we're the ones benefiting from this practice, really. Oh, yeah.
think then, what is it? I don't like that. Doing titles, you know,
Yeah.
dismissing or
Yeah.
virtue signaling.
Because I am offended. Because yeah, that's right. You're not paying attention to me in the way I want you to.
Yeah, or
you know,
your own
stuff.
rules.
Yes, exactly. I think every time is what we're doing. We're seeing them through our lens of our own afflictions, our own deluded states of mind, and there's no foundation out there. Validly. Of course, bad things happen in the world, and where we can take measures, we take them. But in the meantime, like with the prayer-a-thon that IMI is doing, that we, have the prayers for in accordance with the times that Lama Zopa Rinpoche kindly advised to do. And that is, a lot of that's Guru Rinpoche prayers for averting war and so forth. And the idea of having, Putin, Rinpoche says specifically Putin, and, that the wish that his mind is imbued with all these qualities and so forth. And so this is helping our mind to deal with the situation the same way when the when was it? 99, when the Mani retreat was held, 3-month Mani retreat at Chen Rezig, and Rinpoche gave the centre the advice to, do quite millions of recitations of Om Mani Padme Hum every year. I don't think it's ever met the target. It's a challenge, Everyone can sign up, by the way, the Mani retreat. They can sign up. They used to have a dedicated page on CI, but it's not there anymore, but the practice is still going on. Anyway, so at that time, there was we would use this motivation by His Holiness the Dalai Lama about may peace arise in the minds of the Chinese leaders, right? So this was in the context of Tibet. May peace arise in their minds. And you think, yeah, if peace arises in their mind, then this whole situation gets resolved, because from a peaceful mind, you can't create harm. So we can think the same way about Putin. If regardless of whether we believe that's a possibility to happen, we have to put that aside, but wish for that, and that, that, and all those involved, all the leaders involved, and all the people sent to war, and all of this sort of thing. So this is using what's happening right now to help us cultivate our compassion, because it's harder against such ratbags in the world, shall we say. We've really got to practice hard. Okay. From your very bones, cultivate the thought. Oh, my dear mother, my dear brother and sister sentient beings. So again, having cultivated the affectionate love that holds others dear. Lama Yeshe used to say, dear to everybody. Dear, dear, dear one. And it's a really thing to just, if I put that in, my dear mother, my dear brother, my dear sister, and those of you who have the people alive, we don't have to say that to them out loud. My dear friends, my dear Dharma friends, my dear cockroaches, my dear ants, whoever you're having a difficulty with. Yeah, most dear indeed of all these beings. I'm starting to have greater and greater respect for the insect world, because of you hear more about the benefit and how necessary they are in the world, and the concern about the danger of extinction of so many, and what that does to our ecosystem and so forth. So then it becomes easier, of course. But then even with the ants, I would look at the ants at Chen Rezig, which wasn't hard to do because they would invade your house and negotiate and say, there's a kitchen sink, there's a bathroom sink. You can have one, but not both. Anyway, And then in the bathroom, I plug up this little hole where they were coming in, put some blue tack in there. And then I watched the ants, they found another way out. And so then when their friends were coming towards the blue tack, they'd be coming down to say, oh no, she's plugged that one up, come up this way. I thought, what cooperation, you know? They're really communal. They really look after each other. So, you know, you've got to look at the qualities of beings and to appreciate them. Yeah. So this training by means of words in your 4 everyday activities. So it says of a monk, but I think we all do this. If you say traveling, strolling, lying down, sitting, basically in all your daily activities, everything that you're doing, whatever you're doing, training our mind in this way involves following the sutra's admonition to cultivate loving kindness by means of mere words. In other words, the repetition of the words. You know, many years ago, I said to one of my teachers that the Prime Minister at the time, this was many years ago, so, and I thought, he doesn't know about compassion. He's not compassionate. And she said, he says the word. And that made me think, he says the word. So by us saying the words, something transforms. You know, it's like Lam Zopa Rinpoche says, even hearing the word emptiness has an impact on our mind. Even we don't understand what it means yet, it has an impact on our mind. So by repeating words over and over again in our daily practice, or in it as we're going around our daily business, or, you know, or reciting or Mani Padme Hum, it's a mantra of compassion and so forth. Cultivating loving kindness by means of mere words. So we can all do that at that level, as we say, fake it till you make it. We can repeat that over and over again to ourselves. Okay. And then we have the final verse here from the Guru Puja. So taking a verse such as this, Pabonka Rinpoche says, every day train your mind, train yourself with verses to stimulate the remembrance, i.e. to improve our remembrance of the practice of giving, taking, to cultivate the mind of bodhicitta. So reciting verses such as these at all times. And thus, perfect, pure, compassionate Guru, I seek your blessings that all negative karmas, obscurations, and sufferings of mother transmigratory beings may, without exception, ripen upon me right now, and that my giving my happiness and virtues to others, all transmigratory beings may experience happiness. So this is LC 95, verse 95, which we usually repeat 3 times. So the first time, and then Lama Zopa Rinpoche says at the end, if this, you know, if you still need time to complete the Tonglen meditation, to take time here. So in the first repetition, it's visualizing taking on all the afflictive obscurations of sentient beings. In the second, it is taking on all the cognitive obscurations, knowledge obscurations. So the first one, afflictive obscurations, is the obscurations to achieving liberation. In other words, having the direct perceptual realization of emptiness. And the second, taking on the cognitive or knowledge obscurations, which is the subtle imprints on the mind that are, you know, that we purify. They no longer have the potency to generate those negative states of mind. but there's still, we have those still like imprints or tendencies in our mind. And so for those to be purified, the practice of the bodhisattva grounds, 10 grounds, all the perfections and so forth. So then that's the second one, visualize taking on all of that. And then the third one is visualizing that all beings, so they're all free of those. And so now they're free of samsara, and they attain the state of Buddhahood. So it's like the tantric practice of bringing the result into the path. So that's the visualizations that are advised to do during the recitation of that. Of course, when we do in a Guru Puja as a group practice, we keep going, but we can take this verse on and to meditate on it in that way. Or we can do the whole extensive Tonglen practices that have been advised as we've gone through. Okay. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, if you're able to genuinely utilize this one verse in any situation, think about that, any situation. No ifs, no buts, no but, you don't understand this one. In any situation. And really, some situations, this could be a lifetime practice, because if situations that are really heavy duty, that, that really have not been resolved and continue to occur, this can be lifetime practice. Or we might, things like post-traumatic stress and so forth. Of course, people need to get the treatment that they need. And then at some point, maybe having the freedom enough to use this practice to, not as a first port of call, but once the emotion has been taken out of situations, to really use this, we can apply to any difficult situation in life. Do we believe that yet? That's where it says, don't be half-hearted. Really be very determined. So it takes a lot of that courage, mental courage. It takes a lot to challenge the things that we hold on to in our minds. So if you're able to do that, you will be constantly generating bodhicitta, renouncing yourself. That sounds heavy, doesn't it? But renouncing the self-grasping, that self, not entirety of our being, the self-grasping, self-cherishing self. And cherish others, that we're then oriented, how can I help? As Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we're always, looking towards others. How can I be of benefit? How can I help? So another one that we can refer to, which I'm sure folks are familiar with, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Other verses to use. So we've got this one. There are many, like that whole of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's How to Be Happy, little quotes that are easy to learn off by heart. And so from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, during the intermediate eons of famine, may I become food and drink for sentient beings who are poor and famished. May I remain in their presence as various necessities. May I protect those without protection and be a guide leading those upon the path. May I become a vessel, a bridge, a ship for those who wish to cross over the ocean. May I be an island for those searching for land, a lamp for those needing light. May I become a bed for those who need rest, and a servant for all who want assistance. May I become accomplishing mantras and excellent vases. Fabulous, so excellent vases, usually like we have the wealth vases here. Fabulous wish-fulfilling trees and great elements such as the earth, really supporting others. May I be the basis of sustenance for limitless sentient beings existing eternally for them like space. So this is, from the dedication chapter, and it says, as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, so too may I remain to dispel the miseries of sentient beings or dispel the miseries of the world. Sometimes it's more useful to say sentient beings because it's not just this world, and this world will go out of existence before maybe all sentient beings are reaching Buddhahood. In this way, just as all realms of sentient beings, this is what this says, are infinite like the expanse of sky, may I become the basis for their sustenance until they all attain the state beyond sorrow. In other words, Buddhahood. And then it says, in doing so, a bodhisattva will expound their accumulation of merits limitlessly and with little hardship. This is the practice for bodhisattvas who are endowed with great intelligence, which we like to think we are, right? Endowed with great intelligence. Well, it's no mistake that we're in the Mahayana tradition. It's no mistake that we're, engaging and listening, reflecting on these teachings, that we're wishing to cultivate the bodhicitta attitude, which is the Mahayana practice. So we do have this aspiration, and we can say we do have it strongly. And this has all just been about how to enhance that, how to really, in practice, sort of how to put that into more practice in our lives. To the end of the slides. Well done. Okay, so we'll leave it there for today. And just to say, next week I'm in Bunbury, so there's no class. Next week I am away. This week I'm here. Next week I am away. Okay, so we can dedicate. Page 17, third verse down. Gewadi no joda ahamahastange nruhyone nruhachikyang mahalokan Nehe sahala guhopa shojancho central rinpoche make panam ge kuchi ye panyam pame payam one gondu pawashu. Long night prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, page 19. Shiktin kandi pende malupa gangle jungwe sampe jino kadrin some tenzin gatsola so adepso and 23, long life prayer for Tenzin Oso, Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings, O foremost and holy Lama, to you for our supreme. O Lama, please, please live long. And then the prayer, has everyone got for the swift return of the Misopa Rinpoche? Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravakas and Prachika Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge in infinite lands. Please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Thank you very much.
Thank you.